Welcome to the Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Welcome indeed to the Anxious Voyage. We're coming to you again, and as always, from Middletown, Connecticut, world headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut. I usually start the show by making some lame joke about Middletown. I'm not going to do that this time, but what I am going to do to set the stage for this conversation, and just before I introduce my guest, I'm going to read something that I put in one of my Substack columns a while ago. I had read something, a bunch of people at Apple had been studying AI and large language models and found a bunch of faults in them. And that got me to thinking about the kind of language that we've been willing to expect or accept in the past and are still. So this is the brief passage. In 1962, Walter Cronkite, the alleged paragon of objective journalism, and some of you may be aware that Lyndon Johnson once said, if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost middle America. Anyway, in 1962, he became the anchor of the CBS Evening News. At the end of every broadcast, he said, "And that's the way it is," followed by the date. And we believed him right up until the time he retired in 1981. That's the way it is? Really? According to whom? What was discussed in the pre-broadcast production meetings? Who were the people in those meetings? What were their agendas? Why? We didn't ask then, and we don't ask now. So, with that, I will introduce my guest, Ted Czech, who has written this book, Saving the Beast, which I highly recommend, by the way, and we will probably come back to that at some point. So, one, welcome, Ted. Two, what do you think of my take on what Cronkite said? And would you have imagined that we might have been that susceptible going back that long ago?
Well, first of all, I have to say that in Rhode Island, where I grew up, used to live near a town called Middletown. And the only reason it was, I guess, was called Middletown because it was in the middle between Portsmouth and Newport.
Okay.
That's it. So they didn't have any better name than Middletown? I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, generally speaking, we're not terribly imaginative all the time. And I haven't looked at the proximity of Middletown, Connecticut, but I suspect what's true of Rhode Island is true of Connecticut.
So yeah, back to what you were talking about with Walter Cronkite. I remember those times. I'm 54 years old. I remember those times. Gathering around the family dinner table, and you've got the evening news on, and you believed everything, every word that he said. So I think there has been a loss of innocence, if you will, because now we're questioning everything. So I think that's a good thing overall, but we're so polarized as a country right now that we are, it seems, we retreat to our own echo chambers so that we hear what we believe in repeated back to us, and that makes us feel better about ourselves. And so we're not in pursuit. We're not using. Well, I mean, we do have critical thinking, obviously, but I think that the media has latched on to maybe what they perceive as a lack of usage of critical thinking, and so they're telling us what and how to think. The mainstream media I'm talking about, and that was part of the impetus for me writing the book, Saving the Beast.
And I should say, for those who are tuning in who haven't read the description of the show, you characterize yourself as a recovering journalist. having practiced it for 25 years. Do I remember
Yes.
that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
And, I think of people like Barry Weiss, who left a very prestigious news organization, and Greenberg, I think his name might be Glenn Greenberg.
Mm.
I may be wrong about that, but
Greenwald, I believe his
there
last
you
name is
go. That's
Greenwald.
it, Glenn Greenwald. You're right.
Yeah.
And he actually left a publication that he had started,
Hmm.
um, because of both of those people did that because of what they saw happening with the news. What I want to ask you is, if you think about what's transpired on a scale, do you think what's happened in the media overall is attributable to a lack of integrity on one side or laziness on another side, which is to say, it's just simpler to grab what you can and run with it. And maybe also it's influenced by 24/7 news cycles. I don't know. But what do you think?
I would say probably 80% lack of integrity and 20% laziness. I might split it that way. I think one of the major problems is that the mainstream media has um, surrendered to certain, or maybe not surrendered, or they have willingly decided that they are going to push certain ideologies and be swayed by outside influences, and so that to me indicates a lack of integrity. But then at the same time, I have seen, especially in the build up to the election, during the campaign, instances where they're not doing their due diligence and they're just taking something that is out there and running with it. And well, that might be a lack of integrity as well, but to me it also smacks of laziness. So yeah, there's a bit of both going on there.
And I think we could, well, in all likelihood, we could probably dig as deeply and for as long as we want, um, to try to figure out the sources of the way in which the media conducts itself. And obviously, everybody knows the cliche, follow the money. Um, the money is certainly in advertising. So it makes me wonder, um, how did we get there? I don't know if there's a simple answer to that. This may be actually a good time to cite one of the things I want to cite from your book. This
Sure.
is coming from a woman. I'm not going to name names, but a woman who was hired as a professor at the University of Texas at Austin, and she said, "We can't just give people a set of facts anymore." As soon as I read that, red
Mm,
flags are going off in my
right,
head.
right.
I think we know that, and we have to tell our students that. No, the red flag, at least for me,
Hmm.
this is not about getting two sides of a story or three sides of a story if one side is illegitimate. So who gets to make that call? I think now
Exactly.
you cannot cover education. You cannot cover criminal justice. You can't cover all of these institutions without realizing how all these institutions were built. Even if you were able to trace back the way all of those institutions were built, how can you avoid giving people a set of facts?
Exactly, exactly. That is the role of a journalist, at least one who practices what I call true journalism. You gather up all the information that you can from as many sources as you can. You lay it out there for people, and you let them use their critical thinking to determine. You're providing, at times you are providing kind of a springboard for them to do further research if they want, further investigation. but you're saying, look, this is all I know at this point in time. This is everything that I know, and I'm laying it out there for you, uh, you know, for you to read or view. And yeah, so to hear something like that, yeah, is very alarming. Um, and it seems as though she thinks that it's great. But this is what I would call, or what is, it's not what I call, it's what's known as, it has many names: activism journalism, advocacy journalism, solidarity journalism. It's kind of all the same thing, and it's where somehow journalists feel that they have the moral latitude to pick a side and advocate for that side, and kind of going back to what I said before, to tell the reader or the viewer how and what to think. And that is that's such an insult to the American public, and it's not journalism. Not certainly not the way that I was taught in, we call it J school, journalism school, in the early to mid 90s. Something changed at some point after that, and it's reprehensible, actually.
One of the things I wonder about is whether there is anything like objectivity anymore. And I also wonder if we accept the idea that objectivity is sort of waning, do we think 24/7 news cycles have anything to do with that? And in trying to be as fair about that as I can, what I think is, if you're being bombarded by this stuff all the time, which we are, how do we make judgments about what we're hearing is correct?
Well, first of all, objectivity. Well, I talk about that. It's its own chapter in the book, and one of the phrases that I don't know if I made it up or not, but I say objectivity is not a dirty word. But to hear like that professor talk about it, it's as if it is a dirty word, that should never be mentioned and shouldn't be practiced. The way I view objectivity is it's kind of like perfection. You can never quite achieve it, but it's something that you always should be striving for. You should be always attempting to climb that mountain and get to the top. And we won't, because we're human, and we make errors. But it is, it's one of the tenets of journalism, I believe, and we should always be striving for it. And I also talk about you mentioned the 24/7 news cycle, and I cite that as something that as a catalyst for where we are today, just in the sense maybe that that sought to kind of shape the thirst by the readers and the viewer, the American public, for any tiny little morsel of information, that they could be satisfied with that, and then just have this constant like drip, 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 drip. I don't mention it in the book, but in my career, I can tell you when that all kind of was a reality for me. I remember going to, I was about out the door, I was in the newsroom, and I heard on the scanner of a possible murder-suicide in the city, York City, Pennsylvania. And I was stopped by one of my colleagues, and she said, "Hey, when you get to the scene, give me a call." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, just tell me what you see." And I said, "I'm not going to know what I'm looking at when I first get there. I've got to gather information. I've got to get the full story, or at least as much of it as I can." She's like, "Well, just call me anyway, and just tell me, what you're seeing there." And I'm like, okay, I got to get going, so I wasn't going to stand there and argue with her. But that to me was, at least, personally in my career, that was the beginning of this 24, well, we weren't 24/7. It was a local newspaper, but that whole idea that people could be satisfied with just a little bit of information rather than everything. I kind of adopted my style of reporting on breaking news by going on Facebook Live, so at least I could take people along with me. And so I would just turn on Facebook Live, and you wouldn't see me, but you'd hear me. I would narrate, I'd started pretty much as soon as I got out of my car, and if I had to walk a block or two to get to a fire or a crash or whatever, then I would bring people along with me and at least give them what I was seeing. So yeah, like I said, it's the 24/7 news cycle, which probably began with CNN. That's just one of the factors that contributed to the current state of things.
It's interesting you should put it that way, because I've said to people, I don't watch the news, and there are more reasons now that I don't watch the news. But when I decided to no longer watch the news, it was because I didn't know what anything that was being reported to me meant.
Mm-hmm.
And what I meant by that was anything that's reported in the immediate is necessarily going to have further implications and ramifications. That's what I would like to know, if it's possible. And it also reminds me in the bigger picture that one of my favorite 20th century novelists, a guy named Frederick Exley, wrote in one of his books that history is the biggest lie. And what he meant by that was it's always shaded, even if there aren't any ulterior motives involved. Whoever is recording that history has some kind of agenda, motivation, even if it's not nefarious. So to accept it is to be accepting somebody else's version of what might actually have happened, which is what brings me back to that question of objectivity. And you said you said something earlier about moral latitude. And I love that whole idea. I have this notion that morality is a cultural consensus. People within a particular culture think some things are moral and some things are immoral. And that makes me wonder about the evolution of what we're willing to accept as morally okay. The most extreme example I can ever think of is kamikaze pilots. It's really easy to dismiss those guys. Oh my, they're immoral. They crashed their planes no, they
But
were
look at
actually
Japanese culture to them.
They were revered. So I wonder how, given what's going on, not just in the media, but I really wonder, and I liken this, of course, to the phrase moral compass. I wonder what's happening to what might at one point have constituted a moral compass, or at least a consensus on where the thing should be pointing.
Well, somehow it's now immoral to present both sides or as many sides of an issue as there are. Somehow that's been determined to be immoral. Like we're living in a bizarro world, kind of. Because I cite a very prominent cable news reporter, and she talks about she puts forth she uncorks this word, both sidesism. It's hard to pronounce because it's not really a word. I mean, all words are made up, but I mean, it's not a thing. Both sidesism is like they're talking about it. It's an ism, like it's a terrible thing, and it's like no. that is actually true journalism. But this ideology, that objectivity is a dirty word has crept in to the practice, to the craft of journalism, to the industry of journalism, and that's one of the big points in the book is that somehow we've got to turn that around.
And I can put that in context because, not surprisingly, That's one of the passages that I flagged
Mm.
to bring up in this conversation. So I'll share it. This person said, be truthful, but not neutral. Both sidism is not always objectivity. That for me, that's a big what?
Mm-hmm.
It does not get you to the truth. Drawing false moral or factual equivalence is neither objective or truthful. Months later, this person said, everybody was trying to say both sides are equally guilty. She was talking about the war in Bosnia. And they weren't. They're not. Like, they're not in Russia and Ukraine right now. Also in climate change. So on every issue, be truthful, not neutral. Who gets to decide what's truthful?
Exactly. Yeah, that's and another phrase I talk about is and it goes back to during COVID when we were all working out of our homes when I was at the paper, the issue of fact checking came up, and I said, well, who fact checks the fact checkers? Which was a take on if you've seen the movie The Watchmen. Where the premise is that you have this group of superheroes who are above reproach, but then the government and the public start to realize, hey, they're actually human and they make mistakes, and they're not always acting with the greater good at heart. And so it was who watches the Watchmen. So I turned it around and I said, well, who fact checks the fact checkers? And then one of my colleagues said something about me being a nihilist.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, that is everything that quote that you just read blew my mind, and I couldn't believe it. And yeah, like that is another reason why I felt compelled. I felt called to write this book, because journalism is such a passion for me. It was such a big part of my life, and I still write to this day. I'm now involved in public relations, but not like I just wrote something on LinkedIn, a little essay. So I'm still writing, and so it's still a passion for me, and that's why I felt I just had to write it.
We're going to take our first break here, but before we do, I just want to say, I believe everything is cyclical. So, and I also believe, another cliche, it's always darkest before the dawn.
Mm.
If we've gotten to a point at which wanting to know the truth is nihilistic, we got to be about to come back to the upswing.
Gotta be.
That is dark.
Yes.
Very dark. Okay, we'll take a break right here. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
So, welcome back. I want to cite one other, I'm going to say renowned journalist. Not going to mention any names again. He was picking up on the prior journalist's point. Enough with both sidesism. When one side lies intentionally and repeatedly, they are no longer entitled to the benefit of the doubt. They should be held to account right away. Do not simply repeat the narratives they spew. Ask, this is all in capitalized words, lawmakers hard questions. Ask about the fundamental principles of democracy. It may or may not surprise anybody to know that the person who said that is no longer the anchor at one of what used to be the 3 major news stations because of some things that this person did. But that again raises the question, who gets to define these things? If you say something to me and you know it to be the absolute truth and I decide it's a lie, do I get to decide that? I don't know your experience. I don't know what happened to you. We could put a period at the end. I don't know what happened. So to decide that someone's judgment is correct and another person's judgment is wrong, that's not journalism either.
Correct. Journalists are not the ultimate arbiters. We are the way I look at it is we're the historians. We're the day-to-day historians. We are chronicling history day in and day out. Probably, you talked about historians. When somebody sits down to write a book about 2024 or about this presidential election or anything encompassing that, they're probably going to look at newspaper articles for a lot of their research. So that's the way I view journalists. And we are not the ultimate arbiters of truth. We have to tell what we do, like I said, we lay everything out there. Look, this is what we know at this point in time. And then, there's always more times than not, there's updates to stories. But yeah, we are not the arbiters of truth. I mean, Elon Musk said one person's disinformation is another person's information. And so the way that he altered X, Twitter, was that he said, hey, look, I'm a free speech absolutist. As long as and I don't know if you saw the interview with Don Lemon, but he said
I did.
yeah. So he was saying, look, as long as it doesn't violate the law, whatever law, whatever country or state or whatever, as long as it doesn't violate any laws, it's going to you're going to be able to say it on my platform. And that was, to me, that was a very big, that was a revolutionary change in social media.
I want to pick up on the point you just made about history, because you were saying we'll record what we know.
Mm.
My first question is, would we be safer to say we'll record what we think we know? And my second question is, given what you said at the very beginning of the show about divisiveness, I'd never thought about, although maybe it's been true forever, the implications of the fact that we are so divided now, so polarized on the way history will be recorded.
Yeah, I mean, wow, we're getting deep. Yeah, like what is truth, right? What is truth? And that's a tough one, but all you can do is the best you can do. As a reporter, I really stress, putting on your taking off your whatever partisan hat you're wearing and putting on your journalist hat. I mean, that's the way I approached it for 25 years. Yeah, sure. I've got beliefs. I've got values and things that I agree with and disagree with. But to the best of my ability, I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to interview this person and I'm going to interview that person. I may agree with one of them over another, but I'm going to try my damnedest to just approach it as as fair and balanced, to use that phrase, as I can, as is humanly possible.
I've never been to journalism school, so I never had this drummed into my head, but I would have thought responsible journalists would understand that they should consult with as many sources as possible. And early in your book, you cite a number of instances dating back, I think, to the late 90s, certainly the late 80s, and certainly the early 90s and throughout, in which people, so-called journalists, not only did not consult numerous sources, they fabricated them.
Yes, indeed.
And you talk about the backlash that ensued.
Right.
But we're still where we are. I have a hard time squaring that. If supposedly people at the time knew that was wrong, how and why, regardless of what side you're on, how and why has journalism managed to remain so biased? And again, regardless of what side of any political or ideological spectrum you might be on.
Well, there was nothing else. There were no alternatives, for one thing. Back then.
Yeah,
back
true.
then. And that's I talk about in the book. This paradigm shift that we find ourselves in right now, where people are taking their time and their money and they're going elsewhere. You've got the mainstream media that is then hemorrhaging money because they're losing viewers and readers, and so people are flocking to independent news, independent and citizen journalists. There's I can't remember how this was determined, but that kids age whatever, young children and young adults are getting their news almost exclusively on TikTok. And then you got Joe Rogan, who's got the biggest podcast in the world. And so a lot of people consider that news. I mean, he is a very inquisitive guy, and he has a lot of times he has very important, if you will, a pivotal people. Sometimes he just has comedian, not to diminish comedians, but you know, you get what I'm saying here. So that's where we're seeing the shift going on, but that wasn't available back then when a lot of these transgressions, you know, the media charlatans kind of started popping up, and like kind of like whack-a-mole, you had to keep knocking them down. But well, the other thing is that I think and this ties in with what the media, the mainstream media, can do. It's the third part of the book. What they can do if they really, really wanted to remedy the situation, and that's that the American public is forgiving. If you're contrite, the American public is willing to give you a second chance. We're all about second chances. We love the story of the comeback. It's one of the greatest themes in Hollywood, in books, TV, you name it. We love the comeback. Sports, everywhere. So, you know, the mainstream media, if they really wanted to, I say they need to, and I even say this, it sounds kind of hokey, but they need to apologize. It's they just need to say, hey, look, you know what? We're sorry. We're sorry, and we're going to do better. So you gotta you can talk the talk, but then you gotta walk the walk. You have to execute on that, and you can't revert back to what you did before. I think that's very important.
So that raises a question for me, which may very well be philosophical. So I'm just going to try to connect a few dots here. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Friedrich Nietzsche wrote something along the lines of, as soon as you become a leader, you become a follower, because you've created this thing that you want people to follow, but in having done that, you have to do it too. When we think about the Joe Rogans and others who have created, I'll call them alternative media outlets, how do we know that they're not going to end up creating their own echo chambers? And I don't think you use the word vigilance, but I took something that you were saying earlier to be a reminder that we have to be constantly vigilant. And if those people who have become leaders, and I do not mean by any stretch to single Joe Rogan out, there are many, many people doing this.
Sure.
But if they either don't know they're wrong or can't say they're wrong because they might be losing part of this thing that they're now leading, doesn't it ultimately become up to fall to us to call them out and say, hold on a minute. You know, at one point you had some really good observations. Now you seem to have gotten carried away in one particular direction.
Yeah, well, we're seeing it with the mainstream media. They at some point, you know, hit a peak, and then, you know, the phrase about they jumped the shark. The veil was pulled off, and people were like, wait a minute, what is going on here? Clearly, you know, there's other things, there's other subversive things going on here, and they're trying to shape the way that we think. So, you know, corruption, it was corrupted. The same thing could happen with this next wave of independent and citizen journalists. You know, they were the kind of the counterculture, and now it seems as though they're moving to being the majority. So you never know. They could end up being corrupted in one way or another. And yeah, it's up to us to call that out. I mean, I do like the way that it's going, in the sense that, to take Joe Rogan again, he is incredibly inquisitive. He doesn't pretend to know it all, but he's genuinely, inquisitive. He wants to know, hey, what makes you tick, or what tell me about this issue or that concept. And I think that's what was missing in mainstream journalism is that you had this whole ivory tower kind of mentality where journalists, like going back to the moral latitude kind of thing, where they thought they knew better.
Yeah, I
They
completely
thought they
agree
knew
with that.
better than everyone else. And one thing I hope I mentioned it in the book, but I know I've talked about it with people, is that we're citizens first. Journalists are, yeah, you're a journalist, but you're a citizen first. You know what I mean? We're just like everybody else. When I went to crime scenes, I got treated like everybody else. And if I wasn't, I would insist on it. I would say, wait a minute, you're letting that guy over there, and he's just a citizen, so you should let me go there too. But at the same time, the yellow tape was up, and I'm on this side of it just like everybody else. I'm not trying to duck under that yellow tape. There's nothing special about journalists. They're just the conduit between information and their readership, their viewership. A lot of my stories were generated from affidavits of probable cause. Those are public documents, but anybody can go get them, but people are so busy with their lives, they're looking to me to get them. So,
and of course, on the subject of corruption, there's no way to tell what's legit or not, even in those affidavits.
Well, yeah, and I would say, hey, look, this is it's written by a law enforcement officer. It's signed by a judge. It's entered into. It's an official court document. And that's what I could say. And were there lies in those? There may have been.
And in public relations terms, we would call that borrowed credibility. This is the source. We are going to pause here for our second and last commercial break. We'll be back in 3 minutes, and we'll see you then.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on Dreamvision7radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands' distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dreamvision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
I want to pick up on what you propose as your remedy. And I should tell folks the subtitle to your book is A Recovering Reporter Reflects on America's Broken Media and How to Fix It. One of the things that I find encouraging and hopeful is Barry Weiss, who left the New York Times and founded, I think it's called the Free Press.
Yes, yes.
She has written and said publicly that she wants to be very aware of the things that she writes that seem to resonate the most, and she wants to be distrustful of those things. And she doesn't want to play into that and keep repeating the same sorts of things, which seems to me to be the only remedy to creating your own echo chambers. Do you think that what I'll just generally refer to as the media industry has the capacity to do that, especially with the money involved?
Do I think that they have the capacity to like police themselves?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think we've seen that the mainstream media can't or won't. So that's why people like Barry have started up their own media sources, and it's interesting because another chapter is actually in that third section where I talk about my prescription for fixing things. But she employs, or well, I don't know if he's necessarily an employee, but a guy named Yuri Berliner, who was an NPR whistleblower. He now writes for Barry's website. And he's in my book, and so I say that we need more people like him. But the issue is, to call things out. The only issue is that it can be potentially career suicide for people to do such a thing.
Yep.
As he wrote something for Barry's website, and then he was suspended for a week. And I believe that the reason was that he didn't get permission to write outside of NPR. He chose an alternate source to write for, and I think at that point, then once he was suspended, he said, well, you know what, I'm out of here, I quit. So yeah, if you've got 20, 25 years in, and you have your retirement looks okay, you can afford to do that, but not everybody can. So it's not easy, but I'm saying that we need more people to stand up in the mainstream media. The more voices, the better. Yeah.
And when we think about the gentleman that you just mentioned, I go back, I was going to say years, it's decades, to a guy who was at CBS named Bernard Goldberg, and he started writing about what he perceived to be their bias. And of course, he became a pariah. But it seems to me that one of the things that we also have to be careful about is that we don't necessarily buy into axe grinding. So let's just say, for the sake of example, Bernard Goldberg wrote something that was an absolutely justifiably emotional reaction to something that happened to him while he was at the network. That doesn't mean we can or should take it at face value. There very likely were reasons why anything that happened. And if we're not willing to at least consider those, to say nothing of digging into those and trying to find out what they are, then we're just contributing to the problem. And I'm not trying to throw you a bone, but I have to give you props, because your book is not simply axe grinding. Your book is pointing out things that, oh boy, I got to say it, objectively true. Sorry about that. But you're also proposing alternatives. And I think the best we can do is to keep thinking critically, as you've suggested, and to keep proposing things. And I don't know that we're going to be in irretrievable trouble until a point at which we either stop proposing alternatives or those alternatives are dismissed out of hand, as someone did to you when they called you nihilistic. Wow. That makes my head spin.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Well, it makes me think of well, I'll say this first. When I read something like what you were referring to with axe grinding, when I read something like that where somebody's complaining about something, it always rubbed me the wrong way when they never suggested what the solution might be. It's like, no, you can't leave me hanging like that, man. You gotta tell me how we're gonna turn this thing around. And I'm just using, this is just my thoughts based on 25 years as a reporter, how I might go about it. If the mainstream media came to me and said, Ted, how do we fix this? Here would be some suggestions that I would give them. But and then I go back to we are seeing it. Time will tell. But do you recall with this our most recent presidential election how we had the Washington Post and the LA Times, and they decided not to endorse any candidate.
Yeah.
Now you talk about money, and that's what I talk about in the book. That that's going to be the ultimate. That's the ultimate motivator, and so I wonder if that's why Jeff Bezos went to the Washington Post editorial board and said, "You will not endorse Kamala. Matter of fact, you're not going to endorse Trump either. You're not endorsing anybody." Was it money? Because they're hemorrhaging viewers or readers. Then again, they lost another 200,000 when it was decided, when it all came out. And then you got the guy that owns the LA Times, Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong. He told his editorial board the same thing, and then he fired them all. So that's pretty drastic. So I wonder. I don't know, and we may not know, but is it love or is it money? Is it passion for the craft of journalism, or are these just businessmen making a business decision? But it looks pretty good right now. I like that idea of not endorsing anybody. That always gave me, and I wrote about this on my LinkedIn channel, my LinkedIn profile. I always felt like I was had been dropped into a vat of animal fat. Like it just gave you that slimy feeling when a newspaper or any news source would endorse a candidate, because to me, there's no more clear-cut way of saying, hey, we're left-leaning or we're right-leaning, depending on which candidate you support. And you should not be leaning anyway. You should be right down the middle. You should be objective. It's not a dirty word. You should be objective. And you should strive for that, for playing it right down the middle.
And I am generally so cynical. I can't believe I'm about to say what I'm about to say. But you planted this seed, and I'm grateful that you did. It could be that the Washington Post and the LA Times were opting for neutrality. And wow, wouldn't that be a breath of fresh air? I also want to go back to something you were saying about, we're citizens. And I want to attach responsibility to that. This show is broadcast beyond the United States, but especially for people in the United States, which is, at least at its founding, supposed to be self-governed. We as citizens do have that responsibility to speak up, and maybe especially when we're being discouraged from speaking up.
Absolutely.
It's in the charter. It's in our Constitution. That's what we're supposed to do. And wow, I can't believe I'm being this hopeful. If we all determined to do that, it's amazing the things that would change, and perhaps the speed at which they changed.
Yeah. I wanted to instill hope at the end of the book, because we'd like to believe what we see and read. Not blindly. I don't think we're ever going to do that. I think, like I said, there's a loss of innocence, and we're never going to go back. And I think that's a good thing. But I would, I did, like I said, I wanted to leave the reader with some hope. But I do say at the end, keep fighting. Keep fighting. So yeah, I think that parallels what you're talking about here. In this American experiment, we're in a unique position, I think, and we should be thankful for that. And we need to exercise that. That's in our DNA. It's in our DNA as Americans, I think, possibly more so than any other culture in the world, to question things and to push back on things.
Given the way that this conversation has gone, I'm going to blame you for this entirely. But you keep making me think of things that are remarkably hopeful. So when you were
talking, half full kind of guy, what can I say?
when you were talking about loss of innocence, I thought of a distinction that I've never thought of before. You may or may not be aware that to date I've written and published 3 books for children.
Oh no! I mean, I knew you published books, but I
so
didn't know.
I've had a zillion opportunities to go to schools, share those books with kids, and I actually think, thanks to what I've learned from them, we can get some degree of our innocence back when we reinvest in curiosity, in our senses of wonder, etc. I now, thanks to you, make the distinction between innocence and naivete. I think we're losing some of our naivete, and that is hugely positive. But especially if we succeed in turning things around, yeah, we can regain some of our innocence. Why not? It won't cost us anything.
Yeah.
So that's all your fault.
Oh, well, guilty as charged. Yeah, I don't know. I had a great time writing the book. You're far more experienced than I am. This was my first foray, although I had failed attempts over the years. When I got out of school I graduated in 92, and so in 93, 94, I wrote some silly memoir of my 4 years in college that I still have somewhere, about 150 pages. But yeah, I just had a great time writing this, and I appreciate you allowing me to talk about this, and hopefully it sparks more of a conversation. I think I said this in another interview. Let's just have a healthy discussion. I'm bringing these things up, the points about the way that journalism is being taught right now, and about the mainstream media. and things like that, and bringing these things up to shed some light on them, because a lot of people have said, oh, I wasn't aware of, XYZ that you mentioned in the book. So I want to make people aware of it and spark a conversation, hopefully with everyday folks, and with those that can possibly make a difference. Let's just get the conversation started.
I completely agree with that. If we're not having conversations about anything and everything, we're simply asking for trouble. And as it relates to your first foray into publishing, you can certainly take this as a threat if you like. But now that we're connected and you and I know each other, all I'm going to do is encourage you.
Good.
I knew you were a journalist because of this book. I now know you're a writer. So I'm not going to cut you any slack.
There's a difference.
While we are winding down here, please let people know, I'm going to remind them once again, Ted's book is Saving the Beast. You can find it on Amazon, as I did. And Ted, how else might people who want to be in touch with you find you?
So I'm on pretty much all the major channels, if you will, all the major, Instagram, X, YouTube, Facebook. I even started a TikTok.
LinkedIn,
of course. Yeah. That's how we connected. LinkedIn. So I'm on all the major ones there. And as far as the book, yes, Amazon. But if you, for whatever reason, because I did meet a guy who was like, you know what, I don't, that's not really my cup of tea. You can go to online. You can go to Barnes and Noble or Books A Million, or kind of pretty much any of the major booksellers. Because as you probably know, when you write a book and you write it for Amazon or Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, they're an animal unto themselves. And then there's this other group called Ingram Spark, which manages all of the other major booksellers, everybody but Amazon. So any of the other major ones, you can go online to those and you can find my book as well.
Yeah, Ingram is one of the book distribution sources, so that's absolutely one way to go. So Ted, given the fact that things are evolving and we're going to continue learning, I would sincerely like to have you come back sometime if you're willing. And I thank you for being here today, and good luck with the book and keep pushing.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you who joined us today. I'll be back 2 weeks from today with another show. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dreamvisions 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dreamvisions 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.